Example 6. A carbon dioxide cartridge for a paintball rifle has the shape of a right circular cylinder with a hemisphere at each end. The cylinder is 4 inches long. The volume of the cartridge is 2 pi cubic inches, which is approximately 6.3 cubic inches, but 2 pi is better than 6.3. You'll see when it comes time to do the problem, you'll see why 2 pi is better. In the figure below, the common interior radius of the cylinder and the hemispheres is denoted by x. Use a graphing utility to estimate to the nearest hundredth of an inch the length of the radius x. Notice, to the nearest hundredth of an inch. That's implying that the answer is probably not going to be an integer this time, so doing this table technique is not probably going to work as well as a different technique. So, and on the quiz, it is a problem of this variety. It has a cylinder the same shape. It's not a paintball rifle though, because it's 8 feet across. I won't carry that one. I'm going to get you, you know. You shoot him with a paintball and just knocks him over, and it'd be terrible. All right, so anyway, I think it might be like a propane tank or something like that, like somebody has in their yard. Same basic idea. So anyway, we got 4 inches is the length of this, and you can imagine there's a circle there and a circle here that are the bases of the cylinder in the center. Then you have a hemisphere over here and a hemisphere over here. Hemisphere is half a sphere. So take half a sphere, and stick them together. What do you get? A whole sphere, right? So what we're looking at here for this entire picture is a cylinder and a whole sphere put together. In both cases, the radius of the circles or the spheres is x. All right, so let's first of all focus on the volume of the cylinder. Volume of a cylinder is area of base. The base is this circle, right? What's the area of that circle? Best you can do?
X squared.
Yeah, pi x squared. Or x squared pi. Take your pick on what order you want to put it in. Pi times the radius squared is the area formula for a circle. Radius in this circle is x, so pi times the radius squared is pi x squared. That's supposed to be multiplied by height, and when you're looking at a cylinder, height is the distance between the two bases, in this case 4 inches. So h equals 4. So for the cylinder part of this times this just gives me 4 pi x squared. The sphere formula, because again we're going to deal with a whole sphere here because we have half a sphere and half a sphere makes a whole sphere, is 4/3 pi times the radius cubed. And again the radius is x, so pi x cubed. So that's the area of the volume of the sphere. So we have a volume of a cylinder, we have the volume of the sphere, which again both halves make a whole. Those two volumes together make the total volume of the entire cartridge, right? So the volume of the cartridge is simply going to be 4 pi x squared plus 4/3 pi x cubed. At this point, this problem is equivalent in difficulty to the previous problem. Okay? We had to make the equation this time, but notice, here's an equation. The v in the equation represents the volume of the cartridge, and x in the equation represents the radius of the sphere, right? So again, here's an equation, here's what the letters in the equation represent, and hey, look up here, it says the volume of the cartridge is 2 pi cubic inches. So they're telling me what v equals. So if I go in and substitute 2 pi in place of v here, 2 pi equals 4 pi x squared plus 4/3 pi x cubed. I now have an equation that has exactly one variable x in it that can be solved using some method of math. In this case we're going to be using our calculator to help us solve this one. Now a moment ago I said 2 pi is better than 6.3. Here's why. 2 pi, 4 pi, 4/3 pi. Everything has pi, so we can divide everything by pi and all the pi's go away. Makes for an easier looking problem. Also, 4/3 is a fraction. I can multiply the entire equation by 3 if I feel like it. Get rid of that fraction, so that gives me 6 equals 12x squared plus 4x cubed. So again, the pi's disappeared because everything had pi in it. Multiply everything by 3 to get rid of the fraction. 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 times 4/3 makes 4. And now it's just a polynomial function again, equal to 6. I want to make it equal to 0. Move the 6 over here. So I end up with 4x cubed plus 12x squared minus 6 equals 0. Now again, it does say find the nearest hundredth of an inch, right? So we're going to try to get a decimal answer here. we go y equals, again, I'm going to type in my equation that I want to set equal to 0 here, so 4x cubed plus 12x squared minus 6. And I'm going to set a window, because I want to graph this thing. If 4x cubed minus 12x squared, or sorry, plus 12x squared minus 6 is my function, right? Here's the x-axis. It's going to be negative, and it's going to cross through the x-axis somewhere. Where it crosses the x-axis is where it equals 0. So that's what we're looking for, is the 0. The x value that makes 0 represents the radius of this thing. Looking at the picture, it sure looks like it's going to be less than 4. So if I was setting up a window, and I did this 5th period already, so my window's already set. The reason I picked 0 to 4 is because obviously, the way it looks at least, it looks like it's between 0 and 4. If I don't see the graph happening there, I can always make it bigger. But x has to be bigger than 0 because it's a radius. Can't be negative 1, right? So 0 onto something bigger. And as far as the y min and max is concerned, x-axis is my goal. The graph needs to cross the x-axis. So I just pick a y value of negative and positive. It's the same, so the x-axis is right in the middle. I can pick negative 5 and positive 5, negative 2, positive 2. My goal is to see where the graph crosses the x-axis. So I just pick those just to pick some numbers. And just like that, we can see the graph does cross between 0 and 1. So we can see very clearly the answer is somewhere between 0 and 1. At this point, to identify the actual answer, I go to my calc, which is above the tray. So I hit second, calc. What we're looking for is where it equals 0. So we choose 0, which is number 2. As always on these, find the minimum, find the maximum, find the 0, whatever, left bound, right bound guess is what they're asking for. It's between 0 and 1, so I'm going to put left bound 0, right bound 1. Left bound's always smaller, right bound's always bigger. The lines they give me, the answer should be between those lines, which we can see it is. As far as guess is concerned, anything between 0 and 1, because that's the left and right bound. If I'd gone from 0 to 4, anything between 0 and 4. If I pick 0.9999, it'll find the answer. If I pick 0.0562, it'll find the answer. If I pick 1.3, it'll say error because it's not between 0 and 1. All right? So anything between 0 and 1 is a good guess. I'm going to go 0.5. And it's actually 0.641788353. That's how many decimal places the calculator gave me. This very clearly says to the nearest hundredth of an inch, which is 2 decimal places. That's a hundredth. So we want 2 decimal places here, so x equals 0.64 inches would be the length of the radius in the picture. If it wanted the thousandth of an inch, 0.642 inches, round because of the 7, 1 goes up 1. This problem can be checked very easily. What's the volume supposed to be?
2 pi.
2 pi, right? So if I were to type in my calculator 2 pi equals 6.283185,307. If I also change these x's into a 0.64, 4 pi times 0.64 squared plus 4 pi times 0.64 cubed divided by 3. Hang on. Is there a way to make that go away? Ah, dang it. Try again. 4 pi, there we go, x times 6.64 squared. I say it's easy, then I can't type it in, plus 4 pi times 0.64 cubed divided by 3. There we go. 4 pi x squared plus 4 pi x cubed divided by 3. And it comes out 6.245251623. Not exactly the same, but again, we rounded down a little bit, right? And our volume slightly less than what it should be. That verifies, in my opinion, that that's probably the right answer. All right? And so that's basically how you do it. Use the geometry that you've learned to create a volume formula, and then they give you the volume and you need to find the radius. Use the trigonometry, or in this case, how to use your calculator you learned in order to find the radius. Round to the nearest whatever they ask for. On the quiz it'll say nearest thousandth of an inch, that's 3 decimal places. All right, same technique, just 1 extra decimal place.